Good morning and welcome back to Ilchot Shabbat, Sefer Ahava of Mishne Tora of Rambam. Today, chapter 5 is going to deal with the halachot of Hadlakat Ner Shabbat. And as an aside to that, and perhaps very relevantly to all of us, to me, most interestingly, we are going to touch upon the subject of Ben HaShemashot. The subject of Ben HaShemashot is worthy of many, many books on it, but at least I'm going to give you a little bit of a taste of something. אוקיי, הלכה א', הדלקת נר בשבת אין הרשות אם רסה מדליק ואם רסה אינו מדליק, ולא מצווה שאינו חייב לרדוף אחריה. The lighting of the lamp of Shabbat is not something that is permissive or conditional or optional, that if you want, you light it, if you want, don't light it, and then if you light it to say beracha, nor a mitzvah that you only light it if the opportunity comes to you, but rather, like some conditional mitzvot we spoke about, like Iruv Haserot, which you only do if you want to carry from one Haser to another or from one house to the other. Or if you want to wash your hands to eat bread, which you will only do if you actually want to eat bread. Rather, this is an affirmative obligation. Everyone needs to have a candle lit on Shabbat in their house. Whether men or women, everyone has the obligation to make sure, listen to the obligation, to make sure that on Shabbat there is a candle lit in the home. Okay? In other words, if the candle was lit from before, if there is a candle permanently lit, apparently the mitzvah is fulfilled. Even if he doesn't have what to eat, the person should resort to begging and get enough money to buy oil and light the candle. This is part of Onek Shabbat, of the kind of pleasure that we try to achieve on Shabbat. וחייב לברך קודם הדלקה אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להדליק נר של שבת, כדרך שמברך על כל הדברים שהוא חייב בהם מדברי סופרים. And a person must say the beracha before lighting the candle, the one who has sanctified us through his mitzvot and has prescribed to us to light the lamp of Shabbat, like we do a beracha for anything that is prescribed by Chachamim. We explained the reason as to why in Ilchot Berachot. הלכה ב' מותר להשתמש לנר השבת, והוא שלא יהיה הדבר צריך עיון הרבה. Unlike Nerot Hanukkah, where we do not use them for anything else, the light of Shabbat is meant to be used. By the way, I'm avoiding the use of the word candle because candle in modern English has a connotation of this stick of wax with which we light. That's not ner. It actually is not permissible to light with such a thing, as we are going to see. So I'm going to use the word lamp to translate ner, as nerot always looked. The nerot were always more like what you find in Aladdin than what you find that people use. המדליק צריך להדליק מבעוד יום קודם שקיעת החמה. Person who was lighting the lamp of Shabbat should do so מבעוד יום, while it still is day outside, before שקיעת החמה, before the setting of the sun. ונשים מסוות על דבר זה יותר מן האנשים לפי שהן מסויות בבתים ונעסקות במלאכת הבית. And this mitzvah happens to be, for practical reasons, more of a precept of a mitzvah for women than for men. Why? Because for the most part, they happen to be mostly at home during that time, and they are the ones who, for the most part, prepare the rest of the Shabbat. ואף על פי כן, and although women normally are careful about this, צריך האיש להזהירן ולבדוק אותן על כך, the man doesn't fulfill his obligation or his responsibility just by thinking that this is being done at home, but he has a personal responsibility to make sure that this is done. As we say in במדליקים, the very famous chapter we read every Friday night, שלושה דברים צריך אדם לומר בתוך ביתו ערב שבת עם החשיכה, and the third one is, הדליקו את הנר. ולומר לאנשי ביתו ערב שבת קודם שתחשך, and he should say to his family, before Shabbat begins, before it darkens, הדליקו את הנר, light the candle. Harambam makes a point about this in Pirush HaMishnayot, that this should be done in a nice tone, in a nice way. The Mishnah does not say a person should scream or should give a command. Rather, say it nicely as a reminder, a very gentle, kind reminder. ספק חשיכה ונכנס השבת, ספק לא נכנס, אין מדליקין. If it's not known whether Shabbat has come in yet or not, then one should not light the candle. You're not doing anything good, anything beneficial by lighting a candle after its time. And now halacha dalet, I want to speak about ben hashemashot. Let me just read the halacha and then I'll open this fairly, I think, relatively long parenthesis. הלכה ד' משתשכח המה עד שיראו שלושה כוכבים בינוניים. From the moment the sun sets, I'll explain what this means, until one sees or until they are visible 3 stars of medium-sized or medium luminescence stars, הוא הזמן הנקרא בין השמשות בכל מקום. This is the time that whenever we refer to the term בין השמשות, we mean. והוא ספק מן היום, ספק מן הלילה. And it's a twilight time that we don't know, it's undefined of whether it belongs to the day that just ended, or to the night that just began. ודנים בו להחמיר בכל מקום, and therefore what we do is we are mahmir on it everywhere, and we treat it sometimes as night, sometimes as day, depending on the context. ולפיכך אין מדליקים בו, and that's why we don't light the candle, the lamp of Shabbat during this time, because as Humrah, we treat it as Shabbat. On Shabbat, we are not allowed to light a fire, and therefore we don't light the candles of Shabbat, the Ner Shabbat. והעושה מלאכה בין השמשות ערב שבת ובין השמשות במוצאי שבת, and a person who does a melacha both in the twilight time preceding the Shabbat, as well as in the twilight time that follows the Shabbat, בשוגג חייב חטאת מכל מקום. If he did so בשוגג, if he did so while forgetting that today is Shabbat, or forgetting that what he was doing is not permissible, or he didn't know that what he was doing was hayav karet, then he'd be hayav hatat. Mikol makom in Aramaic is mimay nafshach, translated to Hebrew mikol makom. How so? Because if the person, so let's say I did melacha and ben hashemashot of both times, so if the first one turns out that it's day, that means that I was allowed to do melacha then, but that makes the second one to be day as well, in which case the second one is fully Shabbat, and vice versa. If the first one is night, then the second one is also night, and then I was chayav because of the first one. וכוכבים אלו לא גדולים הנראים ביום ולא קטנים שנראים אלא בלילה. And these stars we're talking about, they are not stars that are the big ones that are seen during the day, like for example Venus. It's not really a star, but they used to think that it was. Or the nor the small ones, the ones that are very dim, which are only seen when it's dark at night, into the night. אלא, משייראו שלושה כוכבים אלו הבינוניים, so from the moment in time when you see these three stars, or those three stars are visible, the three stars that are not the dimmest ones, nor the brightest ones, then this is for sure night, and we no longer have this twilight, בין השמשות time, in which we don't know if it's night or day. So let me give you a few pointers about בין השמשות. First of all, from here, it seems from Harambam's description that בין השמשות is a function of actually seeing the stars. And you'd be right, that's what it seems from here, but Harambam later defines exactly what בין השמשות is in הלכות תרומות, פרק ז' הלכה ב', and for Harambam it is clear here, and it is even clearer in פירוש המשניות, that for Harambam בין השמשות is a set time. It's a set time. It doesn't matter whether the stars actually are seen or are not seen. It doesn't matter what area of the world this might be. It is a set time, and it's a set time, and after that time, night begins. That time, it's mahloket in the Gemara between Amoraim, how long that time is, and Harambam is posek lehalacha, and virtually everyone agrees that the halacha is that it's 3/4 of the time that it would take the Roman army to march a length of distance that was called a mil. 3/4 of a mil. That is in the equivalence to today's term. That is 18 minutes. 18 minutes is the time. So again, let me just go to the conclusion, and then I'm going to give you a few things of how we get there. For Harambam, there is a sheki'ah. I'll tell you in a second what the sheki'ah is, because that's not clear also. And then you count 18 minutes exactly by the clock, winter, summer, every time through the year. Those 18 minutes are ben hashemashot. Those 18 minutes are a twilight that we don't know if it's night or if it's day. And then after those 18 minutes, night begins for a fact. So that's true for the beginning of Shabbat, and it's also true for the end of Shabbat. So for Harambam, it seems from Hilchot Terumot and from here that Shabbat, when Shabbat ends? 18 minutes after Sheki'ah. But I live in Spain, and in Spain, after Sheki'ah, there is 2 hours of light. Well, Harambam also, by the way, was from Spain, so this shouldn't have surprised him. But the point is, this is a set time. Let me explain to you where we are. So Mishne Tora, Shabbat, it seems to be originally, everything went by Sheki'ah. And let me give you some background before that. Let me talk about details of technicalities in halacha. How do you tie your shoes? How do you zip your coat? So there is a lot of things that we do in our daily lives that are very natural. And because we do them naturally, it's part of what we do. We have a culture on it. We don't have many details on it. So there is no book explaining how to tie your shoes, which shoe to tie first, which shoe to tie later, at what speed to zip your zipper on your coat, and so on and so forth. So too with the practice of the mitzvot. It all started as we started when Jewish culture was very alive, was very natural, was part of who we were, was part of our nation, the laws of the country, etc. A lot of details were not defined. Everything was done naturally. A lot of questions were not asked. Just like you don't have until today. So for many halachot that remained very ingrained in the culture, and everyone practices them in a widespread way, you don't have really details on halacha, like how quickly should I be drinking the wine of the kiddush. Everyone drinks wine of kiddush, and there is no details on how quickly you should do it. Or another example, how do I have to cut the berit milah? You will not find from the Rishonim or the Gemara, anything discussing the details of how to actually cut the Brit Milah. In the Torah, you will not find any details on how to do Shechita on the Torah itself. There is one for Shechita, which, as we'll see, Harambam dedicates 14 chapters on the details of Shechita. You have one word in the entire Torah, Vezavahta, Kasher Siviticha, Vezavahta, you shall slaughter. This is the only word we have defining how to do Shechita for so many details. Why? Because it was something that was naturally ingrained in the practice of the public. Everyone knew what to do. They didn't have any questions on it. Everyone just went and did it. Same with times for Shabbat. Now, go back to the times of 2,700 years ago, 2,800 years ago, to the time of Yeshayahu HaNavi. The times of Yeshayahu HaNavi, Hizkiyahu, people fulfilled the Torah. They did everything that they thought was necessary under the Torah. But think of the technology they had to measure time. The only technology they had, and we actually have an example in Yeshayahu HaNavi, which is why I'm bringing him, was solar light. You'd have a sundial, and that's how you'd know the time. The moment the sun stops giving shade, which is Sheki'ah, the day ends, and there is no more a concept of time. After that time, everyone does things sort of like naturally at their own pace without asking too many questions. So at some point, maybe because of technological advancements, maybe because the Goyim were more careful with time, maybe because we didn't feel as naturally practicing the mitzvot, for whatever reason, we started asking the questions. The moment you ask the questions, the Bet Din gives an answer. When the Bet Din gives an answer, that is the Nimuflaim, that becomes the Oraita. So you will see, if you study these sugiyot, that there is a clear development. There is some questions that were asked by Tanaim, and by late Tanaim, by the way, about when is Sheki'ah, what is Ben HaShemashot. So what did they do before then? Apparently they didn't have these questions. They just did stuff. And then later on, it was further refined, so much so that we have in the time of the Amoraim, the time of Avayi and Rava, they have discussions on how long should this Ben HaShemashot be, and they set it up. So why am I saying all of this? Because Hem Amru vehem Amru. The only reason we have the concept of Ben HaShemashot is because Hachamim introduced it. And if Hachamim introduce it, they have the right to define it however they want. And I'm coming to answer a question that I didn't ask, which is, well, that seems kind of random to have 18 minutes, a set time between Sheki'ah and night. Why don't we actually do it more scientifically and do it by which place we are at and have astronomical observations and the time of the year? Maybe we'll even do it based on everyone's eyesight, because I can guarantee you that two people can be standing on the same spot and one will see the stars before the other one because one's eyesight is better than the other one's. Or obviously, very, very obvious today for anyone who lives in a modern city, like I think we all do. When you go to any rural area or you go to any place that has fewer lights, you start noticing that the stars are much more visible, and they are much more visible earlier than otherwise. So all of this comes to justify that Chachamim were well within the right to set a set time for Ben HaShemashot. If they hadn't intervened at all, we'd go by Sheki'ah. Now they intervened, now they add a time, and that time is fixed. And it makes sense that that time should be fixed. It makes sense that it shouldn't be that everyone does what he or she sees subjectively on their spot where they are, whether it's cloudy, whether it's not cloudy. You get so many questions. So this makes the most sense. This is Harambam's position. It's not the only position, but this is Ben HaShemashot in a nutshell for Harambam. Of course, again, we can speak hours and hours about this. There is, in fact, books written on this topic, and we are just scratching the surface. Just what is the Sheki'ah? So we said 18 minutes from the Sheki'ah, from the setting of the sun. What does it mean, the setting of the sun? When does the sun actually set? So, interestingly, Mari Kafeh alav Shalom, he has a kind of odd theory on this. For him, For Harambam, the Sheki'ah only began when you saw the first star. Not when you stopped seeing the sun, but when you actually saw the first star. And therefore, all the times are a little different for whoever follows, like the Temanim that Dardaim do, Mori Kafech Alav Shalom, whose work is really unparalleled in explaining Harambam. However, we do have, I believe, a more reliable source than Mori Kafech on this, and this is Harambam's son himself in a Teshuvah cited by, I think it's Rabbi Moshe al-Ashkar, but I'm not sure, I'm not reminded right now. And he cites a Teshuvah by Rabbi Avraham ben Harambam. Yeah, it's Maharam al-Ashkar. And he says in the name of Rabbi Avraham ben Harambam, I'm going to read it here. I'm reading from Yad Peshuta of Rabbi Rabinovitz. Again, very highly recommended for whoever wants to go in depth. ואפילו ששקע רוב עגולת השמש באופק, ולא נשאר ממנה כי אם דבר מועט, כל עוד שלא תשקע כל העגולה בכללה, ותערוב השמש תחת עגולת האופק, הרי הוא יום ומשפטו כמשפט חצי היום. So Rabbi Avraham ben Rambam says it, granted he doesn't say it in the affirmative, he says it in the negative, but the inference is very clear. He says, so long as there is any portion of the globe of the sun that is visible at the horizon, that is still 100% day. Okay, so by implication, the moment that the entire globe of the sun disappears at the horizon, that is Sheki'ah. That is the clearest, simplest way to define Sheki'ah. Historically, if you think about this, this makes sense also. That's when they lose any concept of time on their sundials. So for Halacha Lema'aseh Libad Rambam, or Halacha Pesukan or Halacha Lema'aseh Libad Rambam, it's clear that Sheki'ah is when the globe of the sun disappears from the horizon, which is something that's measurable in an objective way. It doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter the conditions of the day, doesn't matter what your eyesight is like. This is an objective measure. It's a geometric fact that the globe of the sun disappears from the horizon. And then from that moment on, you count 18 minutes. הלכה ה' פתילה שמדליקים בה לשבת, אין עושים אותה מדבר שהאור מסכסכת בו. The wick that we use for Shabbat, we should not do it make it from something that the fire is not going to attach properly. And ur, by the way, just as a grammar side point, ur and or are spelled the same. Or means light, ur means fire. Very important to know the distinction. כגון סמר ושיער ומשי, so wool or hair or silk, וסמר הארז, or some kind of natural occurring like tree substances, ופשתן שלא נופץ, or unclean linen, וסיב של דקל, ומיני העץ הרקים וכיוצא בהן, or those strings that you can peel off the palm tree, or any kind of very moist wood. אלא מדבר שהאור נתלית בו, rather it must be from something that the fire will catch very nicely from it. כגון פשתה נפוצה, like the clean linen, ובגדשש וסמר גפן וכיוצא בהן, or any kind of clothing that was already it was made into petilot, it's called in Hebrew, וצמר גפן or cotton, וכיוצא בהן, or of the sort. והמדליק צריך שידליק ברוב היוצא מן הפתילה. And when you light, your obligation ends when you light the majority, or better yet, you cannot fulfill your obligation unless you make sure that the majority of the wick is lit. הכורך דבר שמדליקים בו על דבר שאין מדליקים בו. What if you use a wick of something that you are permitted to light with, atop something that you are not permitted to light with? אם להעבות הפתילה כדי להוסיף אורה, if the reason you're doing this, if the function of it is in order to make the petila, the wick, thicker so that there is more fire, so that means that you're using the forbidden element in order to light the fire, then asur, This is not permissible. ואם להקשות הפתילה כדי שתהא עומדת ולא תשתלשל למטה, מותר. But if all you're doing is to give stability to the wick, the function of it is not to be lit also, but just to give stability to the wick. So you have cotton, which is very, very soft, and you want to put under it a moist piece of wood. So that's if the reason you are doing it and the function of it is in order to permit the cotton to stand erect, then that should be fine. הלכה ז' נותנים גרגר של מלח וגריס של לפעול על פי הנר בערב שבת כדי שיהא דולק בלילי שבת. This is now something that they used to do in order to slow down the combustion of whatever combustible they were using. So one of the things they would do, they would add some salt. I'm not sure exactly how that works, or grish, or a piece of a bean next to the fire before Shabbat, so that the fire lasts for longer. וכל הפתילות שאין מדליקים בהן עושים מהן מדורה, בין להתחמם כנגדה, בין להשתמש לאורה, בין על גבי מנורה, בין על גבי קרקע, ולא אסרו אלא לעשותם פתילה לנר בלבד. And although we said that you cannot use materials that do not catch the fire very well to light the lamp of Shabbat, you are still allowed to use them for any other purpose Erev Shabbat. We said in the last chapter, you're allowed to do a medura on Shabbat, you're allowed to make a fire to heat yourself off it during Shabbat. So you're allowed to use any material for that. The only prohibition applies to the ner. הלכה ח' שמן שמדליקים בו לשבת צריך שיהיה נמשך אחר הפתילה. Not only does the wick need to be something that the fire catches on it, but also the combustible, the fuel, the oil that you use to feed that wick, to feed the fire, also needs to be of a kind that can flow easily through the wick to the fire. אבל שמנים שאין נמשכין אחר הפתילה כגון זפת ושעבה ושמן קיק ועליה וחלב, however, kind of oils that do not follow very easily the wick, they don't follow very easily the wick on Shabbat, to the fire, like zefet. Zefet is that black material that you put to prevent water from coming into places. Sha'ava, this is actually a pretty relevant statement to us because people use it. Sha'ava means wax. We don't use wax for it. Chachamim forbade it. It's Ibabim Madlikim. We read it every single Shabbat night. For some reason, people use wax candles, but that's not permissible by the Mishnah. The shemen kik is a kind of a tree. It's the same tree that covered Yonah, by the way, the kikayon, so the oil that comes from that tree. The aliyah is the fat from the tail of the sheep. The helev is the internal fat of next to the organs, the vital organs of the animals. And all of these oils are not very good for following the petilah, and we are not allowed to light with them. ומפני מה אין מדליקים בפתילות שנהרות נתלית בהן ולא בשונים שנמשכים אחר הפתילה. And what's the reason Rambam says that we are not allowed to light on wicks that don't let the fire catch very well, or on oils that don't conduce the fuel very well through the wick? גזירה, it's a גזירה, this was a specific prohibition חכמים made, שמה יהיה אור הנר האפל ויטה אותה בשעה שישתמש לאורה, because maybe the light of the candle is going to be too dim, it's not going to be bright enough, and then you're going to be tempted to sort of move it a little bit during Shabbat while you're using its light. Very reminiscent of last chapter and how we forbade a lot of things having to do with cooking because of, 2 chapters ago, because of the risk of messing with the fire and making it be lit. הלכה ט' חלב שהיתיכו וקרבי דגים שנימוכו. Now, if you take helev, which we said you're not allowed to use, but then you melt it, you boil it until it melts, it becomes liquid oil. The kirvei dagim shenimochu, or even the inner parts of the fish, again, people didn't throw anything out back then. You have to remember. So you take the guts of the fish and you make them into some paste. נותן לתוכן שמן כלשהו ומדליק. If you mix inside them any de minimis amount of oil, that's enough to be permitted to light with them. אבל שמנים שאין מדליקים בהן, אפילו ערבן בשמנים שמדליקים בהם, however, the oils that we said that you're not allowed to light with, oils. So you take, for example, shaman kik. Shaman kik was not allowed to light with. That kind of oil, then you're not doing anything to it by remelting it, as opposed to the fat, which by melting it, you're making it into more of an oil, so it's more permissive. So אפילו בערבן בשמנים שמדליקים בהן לא ידליק מפני שהן נמשכים, even if you mix them with oils with which you are lighting, then it's not permitted. Sorry, even if you mix them with oils with which you are permitted to light, like you mix, let's say, 1/3 olive oil and 2/3 shaman kik, it's forbidden מפני שהן נמשכים because they are still not going to let you to have a fire that is going to be safe from the risk of not messing with it. הלכה יוד, אין מדליקין בעיטרן מפני שריחו רע. עיטרן now is a different category. עיטרן is a very stinky fuel, and the reason you're not allowed to light with it, I don't know what you call it, but I can tell you what they used to use it for back in the day. It's tar. Itran is tar. It's some kind of a tar, but a tar that doesn't smell very good. It doesn't smell good. Why? Why should you not light with tar that it doesn't create a good smell? Because if you light with tar, you're not going to want to stick around next to it. And that defeats the purpose of lighting Ner Shabbat, which is to use it and to be in a house that is lit, which is respectable because it lets you enjoy more of the Shabbat. It lets you enjoy more of the night. As an aside, Rockefeller revolutionized the world when he discovered that one of the uses for oil could be kerosene, and he commercialized kerosene back in the beginning of the 20th century, or the end of the 19th century, and that revolutionized the world because suddenly people didn't need to stop working in the winter at 4:30 or 5 p.m. Rather, they had a very cheap and relatively safe source of light, kerosene, which went to all the homes, and people had light. This was even before electricity. That's when people started having light at night. So this is just to give you a flavor of the function of Ner Shabbat. Imagine if you didn't have Ner Shabbat, you don't have electricity. The moment in the winter the sun sets, you're pretty much going to sleep. So in order to enjoy more of Shabbat, it was essential to have this ner. Velo basori, you're not allowed to also light with sori. Sori is actually the opposite. It's a very pleasant smell. מפני שריחו טוב, because it smells very good. שמא ייקח ממנו מן הנר, and you might be tempted to take some of that oil and use it for the good scent that it has. But by doing that, this is forbidden because you are in a way extinguishing the fire. And we're going to see it later. If you take oil from an oil that's being lit, we consider the entirety of that lamp filled with oil as though the fire is drawing from each and every portion of it. So if you spoon out a little bit of that oil, you're actually reducing a little bit of that fire. The fire was drawing from that oil which you just took, and you were a little bit like putting that fire off. Another reason we don't use sori because it tends to fly away, to have a lot of, to sprinkle out some sparkles. Velo beneft lavan, also not with, this is closer to us, gasoline, vafilu bahol, also not during Shabbat because it's dangerous, because gasoline is very, very volatile and it can bring about risks. הלכה י"א, מותר להדליק לכתחילה בשאר שמנים. All the oils we didn't mention, לכתחילה, a priori, it's permissible to light with them. כגון שמן סנון, ושום שמין, ולפת, וכל כיוצא בזה, like the kind of oil you'd take from senon. Senon, as we explained, may or may not be what we call in modern Hebrew senon. which is radish. Sumsamin, sesame oil. Lefet is a root, also has some kind of an oil. And asur ella ellu shemanu hachamim bilvad, and the only oils that are forbidden are the ones that hachamim permitted. Now, some people want to say from here that paraffin or wax, as we mentioned before, should be permissible. So wax is definitely not permissible. Hachamim forbade it specifically. But the candles you buy in the store today, the white candles, they are not really wax. Wax made from bees is very expensive. You make it with paraffin. Paraffin is a chemical compound. It's lab-made, it's synthetic, much cheaper to produce. And some people want to say that it's also an oil, and it's not an oil Chachamim forbade, and therefore it should be permissible. Maybe it seems from Harambam that it needs to be at least an oil, and that's not an oil. But to the extent that it is an oil, then this statement will be the one you'd point to show that it's permissible to light with it. הלכה י"ב, לא ייתן אדם כלי מנוקב מלא שמן על פי הנר בשביל שיהיה מן הטף. It's forbidden to create some sort of a lamp. Again, you have to understand, people were extremely poor back then. They didn't have what to eat. So you didn't want to waste precious oil and just let it burn at its regular pace. If there was anything you could do to slow the pace of the burning so the candle lasts for longer, you would do so. And one of the things they would do is they would set up some receptacle, some container that drips very slowly the oil into the ner, into the lamp, so that the lamp slowly draws from that oil and then lights. Why? We're going to see in a second. ולא ימלא כער השמן ותרנה בצד הנר וייתן ראשה פתילה לתוכה בפי שתהיה שואבת. Likewise, you should not have a mechanism whereby you have two containers. One is the ner, where you have the wick. The other one is the container of the oil. And then the wick draws from the second container oil. גזירה שמי ייקח מן השמן שבכלי. חכמים forbade it, lest you come to take from the oil that is in the non-lit receptacle. שהרי לא נמאס בנר. And the purpose of that would be, and that's actually the purpose of setting up this mechanism of the long wick. You would do this so that the oil wouldn't get the flavor of the flame. If you take oil that was lit with a flame, it has already the flavor of burnt. It's not so good for food. So if you take from the second receptacle, that should be okay. Chachamim did not want you to take oil from the second receptacle. As we mentioned, everything is seen as one unit, and therefore they forbade this kind of an arrangement. ואסור ליהנות בשבת מן השמן שהודלק בו, ואפילו כבתה הנר. It's forbidden also on Shabbat to derive any benefit from the oil that was used to light the candle, even if the candle is no longer lit. ואפילו נטף מן הנר, even if it's spilled over from the lamp, from the ner, onto somewhere else, you're not allowed to use that oil. מפני שהוא מוקצה מחמת איסור. And it's mukse, it's a kind of mukse, as we're going to see in the later chapters of Shabbat. It's called mehamat isur. It's a mukse of keli shemelachto leisur. It's a mukse of something that is used for something forbidden. So lighting, the burning of a combustible is a melacha on Shabbat. This oil is being used for that, it becomes mukse. ואם חיבר הכלי שיש בו השמן אל הנר בסיד ובחרסית וכיוצא בהן, מותר. However, if the person affixed this container to the lamp, to the ner, in a permanent way. So you have the two containers, but one is part of the second in a way, then it becomes permissible. Then it becomes permissible to use the oil from the second one. אין נותנים כלי תחת הנר לקבל בו שמן בשבת, שהרי מבטל הכלי מהיכנו. It's forbidden to put a container under the lamp so that it ends up receiving all the oil that falls from it during Shabbat. And this, by the way, is without using the oil, but it's forbidden to even leave the container in there. Because you are causing on Shabbat to change the function of an instrument. You're causing on Shabbat to change the function of an instrument. We're going to see this in Perek Kaf He, that it's forbidden to sort of make something become mukse on Shabbat, and that's what you're doing here, and that's forbidden. But if you do so from before Shabbat, then that's permissible. It's permissible to leave from before Shabbat a container, a plate under the lamp, so that any oil that falls can then be used after Shabbat. ונותנים כלי תחת הנר בשבת לקבל ניסוסות מפני שהן בהן ממש, והרי לו ביטלו מלטלטלו. It's also permissible to put under the lamp a plate or any other container to receive, to contain, to get all the sparks that come from the candle, from the lamp, not the oil, but the sparks, even though you're indirectly causing these sparks to turn off at touch, at contact with that container, because they en bahen mamash, because they're not really fire, they're just something that's going to last for a few milliseconds. And furthermore, you are not causing this other container to become mukse. However, but it's forbidden to purposely put water inside this container, even from before Shabbat, because you are actively, willingly, deliberately causing the sparks to turn off before they otherwise would. הלכה י"ד, אין פולין לאור הנר ולא קורין לאור הנר. Polin is a very interesting verb that they used to use back in the day. Polin means, by the way, the word pilpul, when people talk about pilpul in the Gemara, I think it's used wrongly nowadays. It's not from, some Israelis think it's from pilpel, maybe from something spicy to spice things up. No, pilpul, the word lefaleh, lefalot in Hebrew, like in Arabic, my grandmother always used to say, metel felle, when something is clean, is metel felle. Felle is something very clean. Vav lamed, or whatever the shoresh is. I don't know what the shoresh is. Lefaleh is to clean things up. So polin leor haner is to clean things up, and the verb refers to actually clean someone's head, is to check someone's head from lice. They wouldn't check, they knew that they had lice. Every so often they would just go there and clean the head from lice. That is polin, and you would need light to do that. So that's something that you should not do next to the candle of Shabbat, the light of Shabbat, because it's something that requires a lot of attention. And we said before, we use the lamp for everything but for things that require a lot of attention. Velo korin leor hanel. Also, we don't read. Korin means to read out loud things that require precision, like Kriyat HaTorah, Kriyat Shema. It's something that we read very carefully, being very careful on how to read each and every letter. ואפילו גבוה 2 קומות, ואפילו 10 בתים זה על גב זה והנר בעליונה, לא יקרא ולא יפלל לאורו בתחתונה, שמא ישכח ויטה. Even if the candle is far away, is a few feet or even stories worth of height above the place at which someone wants to read or someone wants to take lice out from someone's head, it's forbidden to do so. The gezerah applies regardless of the practicability of actually going there and trying to increase the light of the flame. ואם היו שניים קוראים בעניין אחד, מותרים לקרות לפני הנר, שכל אחד מהן מזכיר חברו אם שכח. If there were 2 or more persons reading from the same place, using the same light, that's permissible because each of them can remind the other and they're not going to forget and try to increase the flame. אבל לא בשני עניינות, but if they're each reading, 2 or more persons reading each their own subject, then they are no longer paying attention to each other. שכל אחד מהן טרוד בעניינו, each of them is occupied in their own subject, and therefore they are not going to remind each other what to do. התינוקות קוראים לפני רבן לאור הנר, מפני שהרב משמנן. Minors, children really, they can read this is Tinokosh Bet Rabban, this is the school. School children can read the parasha or whatever from the tikkun, from the parchment next to a candle, next to a lit lamp on Shabbat, if their master is supervising them, because the master is going to supervise them. But the master himself should not do so himself, because the children are not going to remind him. However, he's permitted to find in the Sefer Torah where is the portion that he is supposed to read for them. They used to read, the master would read, and everyone would read after him, would memorize. And thereafter he gives the parchment, the book, to them, and they read. So this is a beautiful illustration of what a school used to look like back in the day. We see from here they didn't have a book for each person or a parchment, a scroll for each person. So the master would get the scroll, he would look where in the parasha he needed to teach. So let's say he would find the parasha of Va'era, he would find exactly where it is. And then just by finding it and by reminding of himself the layout, of course, as basically all Jews back then, he would know the rest by heart. So he would turn the scroll to the children who are supposed to be learning how to actually read. Then he would read by heart and they would hear. And we get all of this from this very, very short, brief halacha, and from the details that there is only one sefer and they are reading and he's reading, and the fact that he no longer reads a sefer. All of this teaches us a little bit how schools used to be like back in the day. הלכה ט"ז, כלין הדומים זה לזה ואינם ניכרים אלא בעיון הרבה. Objects or garments that are very similar to each other. Let's say you want to find out if you're getting the dark navy suit or the black suit, and you really have to pay attention to see which one is which. It's forbidden to bring them close to the fire of the lamp in order to differentiate between them, for the same reason, lest you come and you try to increase the light of the flame. Therefore, too, a waiter, someone who is waiting on a meal and he wants to check which cups are clean, which cups are not clean, or which cups to bring to the table, he cannot do so le'or haner because he doesn't know them so well, so he really needs to pay attention. Whether it's a lamp with oil or a lamp with neft. Neft, we said we should not use it for Shabbat. No, actually, neft we permitted to use for Shabbat. That has a lot of light. But if the waiter has done this for a while, he knows exactly which cup is which exactly what to bring to the table. He can use the light of the lamp for this purpose, to see which cup or which plate to bring. He doesn't need a lot of attention. He just by looking at it very briefly, he already knows which is which. However, if this lamp is made with shemen zayit is olive oil, which is something very good for food, then lechatechila should not do so. If he comes and asks, should I use the candle for this? We should say no, because there still is a little risk that he may be tempted to use some of that oil for the food. הלכה י"ז, נר שאחורי הדלת, אסור לפתוח הדלת ולנעול כדרכו, מפני שהוא מכבהו. If you have a lamp that's set up behind the door, it's forbidden to open the door or to close it without being careful, because you're going to inadvertently cause this lamp to be turned off. אלא ייזהר, rather he should be careful בשעה שפותח ובשעה שנועל, when you are opening or closing that door. ואסור לפתוח את הדלת כנגד המדורה בשבת כדי שתהיה הרוח מנשבת בה. And it's forbidden to purposely open the door next to a fireplace or any other kind of fire on Shabbat, so that the wind comes and makes the fire more lively. Even though this is not that you're planning, let's say there's a gust of wind coming and you want to capture that gust of wind, but rather the regular kind of airflow that there is, it's still forbidden to open the door in order to cause that airflow to oxygenate the fire. ומניחין הנר של שבת על גבי אילן המחובר לקרקע ואינו חושש. However, it's permissible to put the lamp, to place the lamp of Shabbat, ner Shabbat, atop a tree that is connected to the ground, even though obviously there's going to be wind, etc. The suspicion does not extend to that case. הלכה י"ח, כל מדינות ועיירות של ישראל תוקעים בהן 6 תקיעות בערב שבת. Very interesting what they used to do back in the day. Any city, any town that was inhabited by Jews, they would have tekiot shofar before Shabbat. They will have 6 of them. ובמקום גבוה היו תוקעים, they would do this tekiot from a very high place, כדי להשמיע כל אנשי המדינה וכל אנשי המגרש שלה, so that not only the people living in that town can hear, but also people working the surrounding areas of that town. They used to set up towns that they had inside the walls of the city where people lived, and outside the wall of the city where people worked. They had all the fields, all the agricultural areas outside the walls of the city. So we want everyone to hear because we want people who are working to understand when Shabbat is beginning. הלכה י"ט, תקיעה ראשונה, נמנעו העומדים בשדות מלחרוש ומלעדור ומלעשות מלאכה שבשדה. The first time they blow the shofar, people who were working the land, they would stop all the land work, all the land labor, they would stop that. ואין הקרובים רשאים להיכנס לעיר עד שיבואו רחוקים וייכנסו כולם בבת אחת. And those who are closer to the city would wait until those who are farther to come in first, just to avoid creating a bottleneck at the entrance of the city. I'm sorry, the ones who are close to the city have to wait for the ones who are far so that everyone comes in together. Maybe it was for safety reasons. ועדיין החנויות פתוחות והתריסים מונחים, and still at that point, the stores are still open, people are still selling any kind of needs that you might need for Shabbat. התחיל לתקוע שנייה, the moment the second blowing of the shofar is heard, נסתלקו התריסים ונעלו החנויות, people start closing their stores in the market. ועדיין החמין והקדרות מונחות על גבי קירה, but there is still activity going on in the houses, in the homes, people are still cooking. התחיל לתקוע תקיעה שלישית, once the third תקיעה begins, סילק המסלק, והטמין המטמין, that's when everyone takes the food out from the fire, what should not stay on the fire on Shabbat, and when you do הטמנה, בדבר שאינו מוסיף הבל, of course, to do חזרה on last chapter, והדליקו את הנרות, that's when people light the candles, ושוהה כדי לסלוט דר קטן, and then the person who is blowing the shofar, this is very close to the shaki'ah. So that person would wait a little bit until the time that it would take to cook a very small fish. This is about 5 minutes, says Rav Kafeh. או כדי להדביק פת בתנור, or the time it takes to glue a lafa on the wall of the oven. ותוקע ומריע ותוקע, and then they do תקיעה, תרועה and תקיעה, ושובת, and that's when Shabbat begins. Just a couple of points of what we can learn from this halacha. Number one, very clear from here, Shabbat did not begin when they lit the candles. They had hadlakat nerot, and yet there was still time afterwards for this emergency kind of cooking of small fish or to put the bread on the oven. So it's clear to me from here that Shabbat, first of all, it's clear because it says nowhere that Shabbat begins when you light the candles, but it's also clear from here that they used to actually do melacha after they lit the candles. Number two, about Sheki'ah, think about the guy who is blowing these, and he doesn't have an atomic watch to know, or an iPhone to know what time it is. So what is he looking at to know when to do the tekiot? He's looking at the Sheki'ah, he's looking at the actual globe of the sun going down the horizon. Now, about altitude, he's standing on the highest spot of the city. So again, it's not very clear from here when exactly the Sheki'ah is and from whose vantage point, but it seems to me that even if you want to say from here, it's from the highest vantage point of the city, that should be good enough, because that's in fact what used to happen that is the visual that was available to the person standing on the highest spot of the city and blowing the shofar to signal to everyone that Shabbat has begun. Teki'ah Rishona tokea ota b'mincha. The first teki'ah is blown on mincha. Mincha is about 2.5 hours of the, 2.5 twelfths of daylight before Sheki'ah. V'ashelishit kodem l'shkiat ha'chama. The third one right before the sun disappears. V'chen tok'ain b'mosa'ei Shabbat achar sete kochavim. And so too you do Mosa'ei Shabbat after sete kochavim. Li'atid ha'am lema'asehem. So after Sete Kochavim, they'd have these 3 blowings of the shofar, or at least once, after 18 minutes, so that everyone can go and do what they do. Yom HaKippurim shechal liyot be'erev Shabbat lo hayu tok'im. If Yom Kippur falls before Shabbat, and Shabbat is Mosa'ei Yom Kippur, which can't happen nowadays that we have a fixed calendar, but it could happen when you had witnesses declaring when Rosh Chodesh should be, then you would not have Teki'ah. Because obviously it's Yom Kippur, so you don't want to blow the shofar on Yom Kippur. Mosa'ei Shabbat. If Yom Kippur falls Mosa'ei Shabbat, lo tok'ain velo mavdilin, then you should not do the Teki'ah on Yom Kippur either at Mosa'ei Shabbat, nor you should do Havdalah. You do Havdalah after Yom Kippur. Yom Tov shechal liyot be'erev Shabbat tok'ain velo mavdilin. If Yom Tov falls Erev Shabbat, so you have Yom Tov, and then, like we'll have this year, Pesach, by the way, the last day of Pesach in Eretz Israel is going to be Mosa'ei Shavi'i Shel Pesach, is going to be Shabbat. So Tok'ain, you do Teki'ah Shofar velo mavdilin, you do not do Havdalah. Hal liyot le'achar Shabbat, if it falls after Shabbat, mavdilin, you do Havdalah, and we do the Havdalah, the special Havdalah of Hamavdil ben Kodesh leKodesh. Velo tok'ain, but we don't do the teki'ah. In other words, none of these teki'ot is dohe Yom Tov or Yom Kippurim. And with this, we finish chapter 5.